college or something and hold it somehow. I don't know. Right, right. Well, thank you guys all for coming to the Venture Center tonight. We are honored to have our friends from Mainstream Technology here to, I randomly know someone in the crowd I wasn't expecting, so that's what that's about. Anyhow, we're really excited to have all of you guys here tonight to hear from Mainstream and their founders. This is something that we do quarterly, and it's called Build It. Build It is our founder Fireside Chat Series, and it's really fun. So we're glad you're here. Tiny bit of housekeeping because it always comes up. If you are looking for the restroom, you're going to go out the black door in the kitchen over there. Yep, exactly. So, all right. Without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to our CEO, Lee Watson, and he's going to get us started.
Cool. Thanks, Jess. Hey, if y'all in the back would do me a favor and fill up the chairs in the front, we're recording this tonight, and so it'd be great to have a full house. So we've got 5 or 6 chairs up front. Cool. All right. I want to welcome everybody to the Venture Center. Before I introduce these guys and we get started, I want to talk a little bit about the last 12 months. So the Venture Center just completed our first year. And in the first year, we've run 2 pre-accelerator classes. We've put 25 entrepreneurs through those classes. We've got 155 members, 41 active startups that we're working with. We've created 53 new jobs, and of 3 of the companies that went through the programs last year, they raised a combined $1.5 million. And it took a lot of corporations and private individuals at the beginning to buy into the vision, to see where we were going, and to support getting all of this started. And Mainstream was one of those partners. So let's give them a round of applause. All right. Why don't you guys take turns introducing yourself and just kind of a little bit about what you do at Mainstream, because you're all 3 co-founders. Mark, why don't you go first?
Okay, I'll go first. My name is Mark McClelland. I'm one of the founding partners of Mainstream Technologies. My current role at Mainstream is I am the VP of IT Services. That is in charge of our data center, our managed services, options, and that's about it.
You guys make sure you eat the mic too. So.
Hi, I'm Jeff Byers. I'm a VP of Software Solutions, so I lead our software development group. I'm actually, I guess, technically not a co-founder, so we may get into that a little bit later, but I've been with the company for almost 18 years. So that's my story.
I'm John Burgess. He's not one of the founders, but he's employee number 1. I'm currently, since its inception, I've served as the president, mainly because I lost the coin flip. My day-to-day roles include our compliance and information security area and our kind of back office administration. So I'm the minister of red tape is how I like to describe myself.
Bureaucracy. Did the bureaucracy start with the startup, or is that something that came later as the company matured?
That's just kind of accreted on over the years,
Yeah.
as there was
Adds to it.
There was very little administration in the get-go.
Well, let's talk about how you got started. So I think it was 1996. You guys had a pretty good corporate day job, but maybe you saw some new opportunity. Tell us kind of what you were doing at the company. We don't have to mention who it was, but I know you were doing some DevOps, and you saw, hey, maybe we could take this and do our own thing. What was that story like?
Go ahead.
Well, Mark and I were both application system managers was our official title. So we both started as programmers and had been promoted, overseeing teams responsible for different systems. I was in charge of the corporate logistics system, so all the corporate purchasing, corporate receiving, distribution, and I'll let you talk about the whole DevOps thing. But we had working at Dillard's. That was a great place to work. And in hindsight, as an education for a young professional, you could not have asked for a better place. As 20-something, early 30-something-year-olds. We were in charge of resources for a $6 billion company.
I mean, you were running IT.
No. I was running a small set. 6 people was my team at its height. But I can't think of it. We always got the latest and greatest tools. Dillard's was an innovator in applying technology to speed up processes and to get power out to the end users. You think about that. This is 20-something years ago, and we were constantly deploying new endpoints, is the term today. But we were putting mobile computers in people's hands, 25 years ago. And then with the added Benny that with the positions that each of us had, we were afforded FaceTime to the C-level suite of a Fortune 500 company. So it was, you got a great technical education, and you also got a great kind of business exposure education. And I'll let Mark carry on.
As John was saying, Dillard's was an outstanding place to begin your education once you graduated college. We couldn't have asked for a better place, frankly. As John stated, we were both mid-layer managers. I was in charge of the corporate financial systems, all point of sale, all credit authorization, all general ledger at the age of 34. And we had access to ownership of the company. Both John and I had relationships with both Bill and Alex Dillard, which were the children of the founder of the company. And the tools that that they put in our hands in order to provide services to their end users were incredible. The education was unbelievable. We worked directly with C-level accountants out of the corporate office here for, like you said, a $5 billion company. So it was a difficult decision when we made that leap, because I would say that both of us were on a fast track.
So Mark, you mentioned when we chatted a few weeks ago that you were essentially doing DevOps, these mainframe productivity tools.
Right.
Not many in the room even know what a mainframe is. So give us just a little primer on what's a mainframe productivity tool for application developers.
Well, for those who do not know what a mainframe is, most of
It's a big black box, right?
Big box. And what we were doing mostly were CICS development, green screen types of applications for end users, data specific only. We know pretty pictures, none of that good stuff that we develop today. The consistency behind those kinds of applications allows for productivity tools to be developed such that you remove a substantial amount of the base code that has to be written by our applications folks. And so what we ended up doing was developing what we called a controller, which when laid down, you just laid down this base group of programs in the neighborhood of probably 10 to 15 separate applications, and it performed a very core function within the CICS environment, so that the application developer could had to only be concerned with the specific needs of the particular screen in which he was writing. All the base fundamental stuff was taken care of for him. Now, I'm sure that there are tools out there that provide that same functionality, but 30 years ago, they didn't exist.
So we had a talk in here about a month ago on DevOps, and so this was mainframe DevOps.
It was mainframe DevOps, yes. We had screen painters where you're hitting buttons and things are just magically generating code in the background for you. So we were ahead of our time, but we had a company that supported us with that effort.
So it's 1996. You're both working at Dillard's. Jeff's not in the picture yet.
He is working at Dillard's too.
Oh, you're at Dillard's too. So everybody's at Dillard's.
We know where to borrow people from.
Borrow, right?
Borrow.
So where did the idea come from? What was it, and what led to the transition out of the day job into the startup?
Frankly, we started talking 5 years before we left. We were close friends. Various friends faded in, faded out as we moved down this path of making that decision. And we had just reached a decision point that said if we ever had a 6-month contract, we would leave. Now, that 6-month contract wasn't, I guess, our desire to do, application development as a subcontractor. What it was a foundation for us to start our own company to build DevOps, applications. We wanted the big bucks. So that was what was going to get us out the door, frankly.
So yes, we've been, as Mark said, we've been talking in various kind of groups for 4 to 5 years. We'd have this idea, and that group would kind of work on it for a little bit, and then it would fall apart. So then, but the idea, the core of having a desire to go out and try something on our own just wouldn't go away. So we got to the situation where, as Mark said, we made the decision that if an opportunity came along, we were going to take it just to take that first step. We got approached by a friend of a friend who owned a small consulting company in Northwest Arkansas, and they had just signed a 6-month contract with a large company in Chicago, Illinois, to write an application. And these guys were a lot better. They were very good salesmen. So they didn't have any of the technical resources to actually deliver the project.
Because sales is first, implementation is next.
Which is not the way that we've ever done it. But so this guy calls his friend who works with us, who knows that we've got this plan or this goal, and they rattle off the skill set that they're looking for this, that they need to fill for these roles, and it's exactly what we know how to do, what we're currently doing in our day job. So we got to talking in the course of about 30 days. We signed a deal with them, incorporated a company, got it started, and we're on a plane to Chicago, and where we worked for. We ended up working there for several years. But
Well, one of the things I like about that is you got the contract, you signed the contract, and then you decided that we probably should go actually form the company to go do this.
yes,
Awesome. Awesome.
yeah, it was made to come to terms on the agreement. It was a very unique agreement that as we were coming on as a subcontractor, so we got them to agree that we could invoice them every 7 days. So at the end of each week, we would send our timesheets. They agreed to pay on 7-day terms. So based on that, we quickly went to the lawyer with our $300 that was required to incorporate, drew up some papers, got them signed, went down to the bank. Back in those days, they had the application for the American Express card at the teller window at the bank. So you filled it out, got our business American Express card, bought our plane tickets for our first thing, and because of our billing arrangement, had collected the first week's check and before the American Express bill came due. So we've been cash flow positive since literally like day 7.
So let me see if I got that right. Sell the gig, get the contract, form the company, get the Amex, get paid, go to Chicago. Cool.
Chicago first, the first week's work.
Mark, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about why getting paid on those terms was important to the company getting started. Can you explain a little bit about?
Well, it's one of those things that you do not think about when you're starting your company as cash flow. If you are providing services to the end user, you might as well plan on a 45 to 60 days if you're lucky. It's hard to be positive cash flow. You've got to go into some sort of debt in order to be successful. You got to borrow from your own bank accounts, what have you. The arrangement which we came up with was 7-day terms. And as a subcontractor, you're going to take a margin hit in doing that. But the security of taking that margin hit, I hope you understand what I mean by margin hit, your lower price, but the benefits of being positive cash flow out of the gate, it's something that I would probably highly recommend if you're looking for a way out. Pardon? Businesses do not go out of business due to a bad plan. They go out because of cash flow issues, period. It's as simple as that.
So this was 96. A few months later, the beginning of 97, you brought on Axiom, I think, as your second client. that's pretty cool. Talk about that. You had just formed the company. You got this other gig, formed the company, and now Axiom has contracted with a local startup. How did you pull that off? I think there's a lot of people in this room that would love to get some of the local corporations as customers.
Well, that was another kind of side benefit of having worked at Dillard's was what we call a big blue shop. It was pure IBM. There wasn't a piece of hardware in the company that didn't have IBM stamped on it. And there was Dillard's was one of the 100 largest IBM accounts in the country, which is pretty unique for a retailer because it kind of demonstrates the obsession they had with technology.
Some brand loyalty right there.
Yes. But we had a large IBM team kind of embedded at Dillard's. And over the years, as those people would spin off and do other things, a high percentage of them, because of Charles Morgan's connections with IBM, had gone to work at Axiom. So it was I will never forget it, that the day I turned in my notice to my manager at Dillard's, on my way home that night, I had a cell phone because Mark and I could never be out of touch. We were on call 24/7, 52 weeks a year.
Okay, now I have to do this. Let's quantify cell phone. This was a bag phone with a cable that plugged in.
No, I had a StarTAC at that time.
Okay.
Yeah. And a satellite pager. Because the cell phone only worked in very populated areas, so you had to have the satellite pager so they could reach you, so you could still go find a payphone to call in. Anyway, I was on the way home from work that night, and my phone rang, and it was a former member of the IBM team at Dillard's who had gone to work at Axiom, had heard the news through the grapevine, and wanted to set up a meeting to talk about what we were doing. And my last day at Dillard's, I left early. They didn't give me a going away lunch. And went and had lunch with a team of people from Axiom, which was the first meeting toward bringing them on board as a client in early '97.
Very cool. So you had a connection. You had a good connection there.
Yes.
Yeah. Did you find that you had to de-risk yourself in other ways in order to get Axiom as the client, or was that relationship the golden ticket?
Back in those days, that was not the case. You didn't have to. It was kind of personal reputation that kind of drove that. As we have gone through the years and got outside those personal, we've had some real struggles with. Okay, you have 10 people and you're working this place called what, Mamel, and why are we going to risk our custom software on you? So the personal relationships have been huge.
Cool. So when you guys got started, the founders, the three founders at the beginning, you each put $100 in to start the company. And I think, was that the only founder investment that you ever had to make? Cool. Do what? Yeah. Cool. So that first contract, you wanted 6 months. That you got more than 6 months, didn't you?
The first contract was initially set up for 6 months. It ended up being a 10-month engagement, not because we were slow, but they kept finding additional work for us to do. And I think they felt that they found some individuals out of Arkansas who weren't barefoot and that could actually do the work for them. Interestingly enough, after the first 10-month engagement, they felt that they wanted us to stay on, and so they gave us an opportunity to bid for a substantial Y2K conversion. This was converting old VSAM to DB2 and removing all their Y2K issues. For who doesn't understand Y2K?
No, nobody gets this. So break this down.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we do have some people over 40 here. Y2K issues were in regard to the way in which we used to try to save space on dates in our SANs. I'll use a SAN term. It was a 2-byte field where they didn't put the 19 in front of the year. So at 1984, all we stored was 84. Well, that was a problem when 2000 came along. You needed 4 digits to store the date. And so we had to convert all those applications that were running using 2 bytes to store the year. Just think of all the memory, or all the memory and, SAN storage space they saved by not having the 19 in front. And so 2000 rolled around, that was a problem. So all those programs had to change. We were fortunate to be involved in the process where Safety Clean, the company, decided they were going to split this amongst 3 subcontracting companies. Mainstream took that opportunity to take advantage of our relationship with Safety Clean because we had the relationship. Our subcontractor was just scraping the money off but paying us weekly, which was good. And we kind of intervened and took over the relationship and told them that they could continue to control the contract, but that we would split the number of resources required. And that gave us the opportunity to hire people and open an office in Maumelle, Arkansas. So that was our first major contract with actual employees working for us. It was ended up being a 2-year opportunity for us.
So 6 months to leave Dillard's. You got 10, you got Axiom, you got a 2-year.
Yeah.
You're rocking and rolling pretty good in the first 12 months.
Right.
So I want to talk about Maumelle, but before we do that, Jeff, this is about the time you come on board.
Right.
So you knew these guys at Dillard's, but they're out there doing this startup thing. What's going on in your head, and why did you join?
Good question. I guess I knew these guys. I had started at Dillard's '93, straight out of college. Big dreams of following the climbing the corporate ladder and doing that thing. Mark was actually my trainer when I started at Dillard's. They had a very good, thanks. They had a very solid training program. They would spend several months with you and really be thorough and really teach you a lot. So Mark, he started in the training and taught me for the first several months. And then when I was assigned to a permanent group, I was in John's group. So I got to know both of these guys very well, respected them tremendously, learned a lot from them. Was very sad and disappointed when they left, because I loved working with them, but I certainly understood their opportunity and what they were trying to do. And, I had in the back of my head.
You thought they were crazy, though, didn't you?
I didn't think they were crazy, but
corporate job.
No, by that time, I think I had the entrepreneurial itch a little bit. I think I had come to realize that climbing the corporate ladder wasn't necessarily what I was after. And so I could see a lot of the motivation behind their decision and what they were doing and really respected it. So they left, and then I actually changed jobs and went to Altel Information Services at that time for a few months. And I had it in the back of my head that, maybe someday they would call and years down the road, and it turned out to be several months down the road. And when they called, jumped at the opportunity.
He played hard to get, though.
That's right.
That was one of our biggest challenges, was getting people to come to work for us. And because pretty much all we could offer them was that you didn't have to wear a suit, and we had free Cokes. We didn't even, still, yeah. So, and we recognized early on that our competition for talent was not the other small companies like us. We wanted the people from the big places that had the kind of the corporate mentality, or not the corporate mentality, but the corporate experience. And so early on, we're trying to figure out what can we do to entice these people to leave these, very secure positions to take a chance on, at that point, 4 folks that are working in an office in Maumelle. So that was, this is the first I've heard that he had the itch, because he played very hard to get.
So the office in Maumelle is interested. When we talked about that earlier, I think you called it a very bootstrapped operation. So first of all, talk to us about the retail space that you're in.
The actual building?
The actual building, yeah. So this is a retail building in Maumelle.
Yes. The building still stands. It's actually, is it the charter school now? Yeah, the Academics Plus Charter School in Maumelle was the building where our first office was. And in one end of it, the end down by the library, was a Mexican restaurant, Mamacita's. Our office was right next door to Mama Sita's. And we actually had there was a Dutch door that came out of their kitchen into where we put our server.
So on one side of the wall is the server rack. On the other side is the deep fryer.
No, it was, well, the chip fryer was immediately on the other side of the door. And it wasn't a rack. We didn't have a rack until what, 2002? This was a single tower server, little Linux machine named Lepton, that just basically handled our email. That's all we had a one-page static website that was up there, and our email was all that the server was there for, but we called that room the chip room because it smelled like tortilla chips. And I remember that, this building was absolutely the cheapest place we could find. $6 a square foot, and it was worth every dollar of it. I'd pull into work in the morning and I would almost literally fall to my knees because it had not burned down during the night.
Yeah, it's amazing the building's still there.
Yes, it is. I had to have the Audubon Society come out and clean the birds out of the attic periodically. We discovered that when we expanded, and we had the only other space in the building was the office at the far end of the building. So to run our single strand of Ethernet cable to wire up the 10 terminals that we had at the other end, when we were trying to go through the attic, we discovered that we thought what everybody had told us was a firewall was not actually a firewall. It was just a wall. So there was all sorts of code issues, but like I said, it was a miracle it's still standing.
So you had a very elaborate cooling system for all this equipment.
I'm not lying about that.
And you had some pretty good brands going on, and this cooling system was so elaborate. You picked up this equipment, I think, at Sam's Club.
Oh no, it was just box fans.
Just box fans.
Yeah. And this building had no insulation that I could tell because my office faced west, and it would easily get to 86 degrees in my office in July. It was just like baking. We had 12 people crammed in this little office, and everybody was just wearing shorts and t-shirts because all of our clients, were either in. Most of our work was happening in Chicago. They never saw us. They didn't care what we looked like. But we didn't have a lot of computing resources on the floor because all of our work was done remotely. We were 3270'd into the mainframe at Safety Clean, or we had some PCs that we were just doing local development in our stuff for Axiom. But there was no real need for a lot of infrastructure.
Talk to us just for a second about the infrastructure you have today. So you had box fans, you had cables on the floor, 30 minutes of battery backup.
Oh, that was in West Little Rock.
Yeah, the office in which you're talking about was really
West.
bad. Then we just moved to the semi-bad location where
Bad, semi-bad.
bad to semi-bad. Yeah, where we actually started running a SaaS environment, software as a service, for some Fortune 500 retailers, and our cooling was essentially box fans, and we had a Symetra backup system where we could go through a normal shutdown because we had 30 minutes of UPS or 30 minutes of battery in the rolling blackouts that would occur in West Little Rock. We were out there in Corporate Hill, and during the summer they would roll blackouts, and we would be just watching the clock. Trying to decide whether we contact our customer or just pray that the power came back on.
And that they don't notice.
What? Oh yeah, it's interesting.
It never happened. And these were some pretty legit brands you guys were working with.
These were, I'll throw out one of the names. One of the customers was Staples. So we're running a SaaS SaaS environment for Staples, and with rolling blackouts. And so, that was our main reason that we just knew that we couldn't continue to do this. This was ridiculous, and that at some point in time we were going to have to pay the piper. And so we looked for better office space, and we ended up downtown, former Federal Reserve Bank building, where we've got a 5,000 square foot data center on the second floor of the Federal Reserve Bank building. You're more than welcome to come by and take a look at it. We actually have, cracks on the floors and UPSs and all that good stuff that a legitimate data center should have. So, but it takes time and takes risk. and you roll the dice sometimes.
So elaborate on the data center for just a minute, because you go from this very colorful story that you just shared to a pretty significant investment in the data center. And I mean, it's substantial. It's not just a room with an air conditioner and some servers in it. You've got diesel generators, and what does that look like?
Well, the interesting thing is the way we were nudged into the data center environment. We had actually developed an application for a company out of Houston, Texas, called Compliance Networks, and their customers are Fortune 500 retailers. And we originally developed the application as a distributed model. So we had all these servers sitting on all these disparate locations throughout the United States trying to manage it, and it was a joke in trying to do that. And so we brought it all up underneath one roof, which pushed us into a legitimate data center environment. So interestingly enough, we essentially had about 2 cabinets that nudged us into a 5,000 square foot data center. And so now you've got this huge space that you're trying to figure out how to sell other colo to, or infrastructure as a service, which we also sell. But you just don't find too many 500 square foot data centers that are legitimate UPS, true cooling, redundancies, ISPs, multiple ISPs, generator, the whole 9 yards. You just don't find that. And so 5,000 is frankly the smallest thing that we could find now.
Cool. So you mentioned Compliance Networks. Let's go back and talk about them for a little bit. I think they brought an idea to you. This was really kind of an idea on a napkin, I think, at your house, right, John? Well, so where did this Compliance Network relationship get started?
The Compliance Network relationship started actually in 1992. 2 of the founders of that company were actually my customers at Dillard's. They were in the distribution organization at Dillard's, a couple of industrial engineers, and we had become friends. One of them worked in Dallas and one of them worked in Kansas City, and in my rounds of visiting my users, we were about the same age, so we'd kind of started hanging out and become good friends. So after we had left Dillard's, both of these guys ended up leaving about the same time and going to work at another retailer. Fast forward to 1999, they had brought us in. We had been doing some projects for this retailer. In fact, Jeff was working on those projects. Some little barcode scanning kind of logistics type applications. And one day they said they wanted to come up and visit me. So on a Saturday afternoon of the Arkansas-Tennessee game in November, they are sitting in my dining room, around my dining room table, laying out this idea for, they're going to start a company and they're going to write a software product to manage vendor compliance for retailers. And it was, the back of the napkin is kind of misleading because while the technical details, all they were kind of cobbling together some access database that they had at their disposal in their place as a prototype. So the technical details were very much back of the napkin-y, but they had a very solid business plan, and that's what we've talked about since. Impressed us about them is they had a very tightly focused business plan. They were in excellent command of the domain that the subject matter that they were tackling. They were all supply chain experts. They come from excellent pedigree. There were 4 of them that were founding that company. They had lined up some initial funding, enough to kind of write, and they were approaching us about being the development partner, and they offered us sweat equity to write the application, and that was a hard decision.
So I want to come back to that, but they were having to go sell this to their customer. So you spent a weekend, you charged them what, $25K to write some sort of prototype that you call Hammer. And how long did it actually take you to do it?
It took me the better part of a weekend to write it.
And you sold it for $25,000.
It was a Windows dialog application, very much what you'd call a wireframe kind of prototype. It had some radio buttons that would actually radio, and you could flip between some tabs. And
okay, so for all of the contract developers in here, Here's an idea for you. Build a wireframe, sell it to somebody for $25K, and then get the contract to build the actual piece of software.
So that was part of their tightly focused plan, was that we're going to write one version of the application that has this functionality. And they had said out of the gate that anything beyond that was depending on, they had a timeline for how long they were going to be able to survive, barring any sales. Well, one of my favorite lines is "God smiles on fools and little children." They took this wireframe that we developed over the weekend, and they took it they took it to a sporting goods retailer in Houston that they had a relationship with, that somebody would agree to a meeting, and as luck would have it, the CFO of that company loved what he saw, knew that he had a problem in that area, which is what attracted us to the idea, is that we knew from our experience at Dillard's that every retailer has this problem. And the first person they visited agreed to buy it, and actually agreed to pay them $1 million to license the software. And we had that was like our second server, and it was called Alvin, who was the guy that wrote the check.
So $1 million contract for the software to the compliance. You guys own about 12% of Compliance Networks today. So your sweat equity investment is paying off. In addition to the equity stake, they've written you something like a combined $26 million in software development over the last decade.
Last 15 years, yes.
15 years. Wow. Congratulations. I'm going to open it up for questions in just a minute. I want to ask, so you all think about it. If you would, line up under the window here. There's a microphone down on the ledge. And so we'll do some Q&A. I want to talk about culture. So the mic's going to be passed around. What's the culture like at Mainstream?
The culture, to me, it sounds cliche, but it's a close-knit, family-oriented environment. It is, we've talked about this a lot, that I think it is the most important thing that I think we can influence and can shape. And to have a good company, you've got to have a great culture. And we've been very fortunate. I think a lot of it is kind of dumb luck sometimes, that we sort of found our way on some of this, but we've latched on to what has worked and found out that, that is such a key element, that you've got to hire the right people. Not only the right people, you've got to have the right clients. You've got to be very, very picky about the people that you do work for. And so it all has to work together. Our people are very passionate. They love what they do. As John said, we like to hire a lot of people that have experience in bigger shops. We also hire a lot of people that have been independent contractors, that have experienced some of these things. And so there's no one right answer for how to hire, but the main thing is you have to find something that's going to fit, somebody that's going to fit within your culture, somebody that's going to be a team player, have a positive attitude, and be very passionate about serving the client. And we've been very fortunate to develop a very, very good group.
In addition to that, when we started our company, we basically hired anybody that would say yes. And, and we found that it would have been much better had we thought a little more about our culture on the front end and hire less about skills and more about culture. Hire intelligence, hire individuals that are going to fit in, who have character, who have heart, and that can be trained. Because we know what we get when you get an individual with skills who does not want to fit into the culture. It's an expensive lesson.
So you guys have 50 employees. You've been ranked on the Inc. 5000 list for the last 3 years, 8th or 9th in Arkansas. How does this notion of vision to value relate to the success that you've had?
I think one of our core values is long-term relationship focus. We try not to get in to be a quick hitter. By design, we're not going to be the cheapest provider, but our value proposition is that we're going to give you the best product that you can get, and we actually, because of the strength of our culture, we have virtually no turnover. So what we find is that when we, as Jeff mentioned, when we find the right clients who share that value, what they find is that over time we become the repository for their intellectual property. They can, and we don't expect our clients to use us every day, but we write software for people. They might go away for a couple of years, come back when it's time to work on it. And chances are, not only, we still have the documentation from what we did before, but chances are the very same people that wrote it in the first place are still around and still very excited about working on it again.
One of the things that I think is pretty cool is you had an employee leave at the beginning of the year to pursue a new opportunity. That person is now back, also pursuing a startup on the side, and you guys have said, hey, welcome back, and if you need mentoring in starting your venture, we're going to help you do that.
Yes, absolutely.
Cool. Well, that's pretty cool.
And I guess when we left, started out on our own, it was very much a mixed bag of reception that we got to that news. There were a lot of people that told us that we would be back in 6 months after we had fallen on our face. There were people that told us, don't you ever darken our door again. There were people that were supportive of it. And we agreed from the get-go that we did not want that to ever happen to anybody that came through our door.
Right. Mark, you were pretty passionate about that. You said a lot of people said that you were going to fail. And if they were in the room today, what would you say to them? We are live streaming this broadcast.
We're live streaming.
We are live streaming.
There were various people who said that we would fail, and then when we were successful, there were various people who said we were lucky. And I always like to think in terms of that people that put themselves into position to take advantage of fate, and that's what we've done. And I don't want to have any ill will towards any of those individuals, but we're talking they're not. So
Nice. All right. Do y'all have some questions? If you would, come up here, grab the mic, flip it on.
Good evening, guys. Thanks for coming out and sharing your story. It's been really cool listening. The question I have is, when you guys decided to go on your own and start your own business, it sounds like you had a little bit of experience, but I didn't get, maybe I didn't hear it, how many years experience you were doing. It sounded like you did do a fast track, but obviously now you're doing mainstream longer than you probably working there. But just kind of give me an idea of like how much you learned in your previous, because I hear that a lot. I'm on my own now, and I've been doing some of that, and I do definitely take on some of the experience I've already had, but a lot of things I'm doing now, it seems like I'm learning as I go in a sense. And I wanted to get your opinion on that and how that played into your decision to go on your own, and how you've seen that, or that value. Does that make sense on just pulling in your experience, but also as you've gone?
Okay. I had been when we finally left, I'd been at Dillard's for 8 years, and I started working in development as soon as I graduated from college. So that was the only job I'd had coming out of college. I actually worked for Dr. Hendren briefly during college, and he's been very influential throughout our career. When we left, it was only a transition from programming for one organization and then programming in the same skill set for another organization. I think that exposure that we had to the C-suite at Dillard's was kind of a double-edged sword, in that sometimes I think that it made us kind of overconfident, because there were a lot of things that started happening that we had no idea how to deal with, as far as on the business side, and we had never sold anything, and still haven't. It was purely, our work was strictly coming from people reaching out to us, asking us, and we were frankly kind of hard to do business with. It was very hard to get us to say yes. So it was, so sales has been, so that part of it, once we individually transitioned out of being the actual developers, it has been very much a learn as you go along, and we've had to rely very much on a series of mentors in these areas that we didn't have experience in. people like Dr. Hendren, and we had to, other people that back in those days, we talked about it, that there was no excellent organization like the Venture Center that provided a way to hook up with mentors. The only way that you had mentors were the people that you knew, like your father or your, the senior people at your organization that didn't hate you even though you'd left. Kind of I guess, yeah.
I had 12 years in at Dillard's, started directly from college, all technical application developer, COBOL mainframe, CICS, DB2. When I took my manager role, I was in the manager role for 3 years, from about 93 to 96. Now at Dillard's, we were thin. As you know, we were supporting a $5 billion company, that's B billion, with a staff of probably 60 developers. And so managers kept their hands in the midst of all the technical things going on. So we were never removed from the technical side, unlike today where they will not allow us to touch a keyboard most of the days. We were very involved in the day-to-day. But at the same time, we were thrust, just as John has said, into relationships with C-levels and learning how to understand the business side of things. From any of you that are thinking in terms of going out on your own, I would highly recommend having basic understanding of P&Ls, balance sheets, accounting. You've got to have some understanding of that. Don't be at the mercy of someone else and being able to understand your P&L. Okay? Those are things in which we did not have. So there was a certain amount of hard knocks education. Mistakes in which we've made, we could have been retired by now, but we're still working hard.
Just real quick, I had 4 years at Dillard's and then a few months at AIS before joining these guys, and I would just echo what they're saying, that I had the technical skills and very confident that I could do what they needed to get done. But as far as the business knowledge, I didn't have any experience with that, and I do think that that's something that should be highly encouraged, is understanding the business and understanding all the P&L and everything that goes into that, sales and the cycles and how long things take, because you've got to have the skills, but then you've also got to have the business knowledge to make it all work.
Share what I'm about to go on.
Okay, so there we go. So it's good to see you guys. Actually, it's interesting. I've worked with two of these three at Dillard's back 27 years ago, whenever I was out there. One of the things I want to ask you about is, I was down in San Antonio, down there by Austin. Everybody looks at Austin, Silicon Valley as the hotbeds of technology and everything like that. It's really cool to come back to Arkansas and see technology happening here. But I want to ask you guys something. What do you see as the challenges of having a technology company here in Arkansas, and what do you see as the opportunities?
I guess the biggest challenge is communicating that message to the rest of the United States. They look at Little Rock as probably a third world nation when it comes to technology, frankly. And what we have found is that when we work outside this state, we find how quickly they understand what we do know, and that we are very successful. We had worked, how long have we been in business before we had our first customer that was an Arkansas state other than Axiom? But we probably worked for 8 or 10 years before we had a second customer that was in the state of Arkansas. Our customers are coast to coast and south of Houston and north of Chicago. And so communicating that Arkansas is capable of doing what the rest of the world is doing is just a message that needs to be delivered, because it sure has nothing to do with the actual abilities of the people in that state.
And that I know that Dr. Chamberlain, I remember when I was in college that Dr. Chamberlain would talk about the Arkansas technology community, and so it's not like the message it's just slow to adopt, I guess. An advantage of being here is the just the cost of living, the cost of labor, just from a pure business standpoint, it's certainly a lot cheaper. It's a lot, relationships matter a lot more here than they do. You go to a big market like San Antonio or Austin, and it's a revolving door, it seems like. Very, very casual. And here, you know, we have to do a good job. We have to treat each other with respect, because we're going to see you at the church or at the ballpark or at Kroger. And, you know, very quickly that there's not enough of us to risk doing that. So, so I think it's the close-knitness of the community is certainly an advantage that I hope we don't lose.
Hello, my name is Stellas. I know you all are purely into technology, but I have a totally different question on this. When you started the organization, how did you resolve the conflict between, because one guy might be looking after marketing or money, one guy might be looking after pure technology. We as a team, we always fall down. How do you help him and to stand up when he's falling down? Can you share some experience so that at least new guys starting like this, how do you tackle those? Technology we can handle, I have no problem. I have a lot of difficulty in handling people. So I would suggest you give some thoughts on that.
Go ahead. Okay.
I'm going to answer some of the questions.
Okay. In the early days, because the selling was not an issue, as we talked about, there was nobody focused on selling. We were pretty much, everybody was billing 40 hours a week. It took one of us about, you know, an hour one evening, because we didn't do it during the day because we were billing, to do the payroll and to, you know, do bills and invoices. You know, we were only doing one invoice, so that was pretty easy. So, and we would take turns. So one of us would do it for 6 months, and then we'd pass the checkbook and the QuickBooks file over to somebody else to do it. As we've grown, then it's just kind of been again, we've alternated. We haven't alternated in quite a while now. We've kind of settled into our comfort zones, but probably in that middle period, that 2001 to 2006, we just tried different things. I was initially in charge of the compliance networks team. We got the opportunity to do try a different joint venture with them, which I was going to take over. So Mark assumed that relationship for me, and he had been doing the books up to that point. I took over the books from him. Jeff, in the meantime, was moving up and taking over administrative responsibility of some of the developers that weren't tied to any of those projects. So I'll let somebody else talk about the picking up.
Probably a more direct answer is that we have pushed things around to the point where we have found where we do have some expertise within our group, but there's always areas in which we're never going to get. It's as simple as that. And we've looked to outsource those particular items. We have outsourced our accounting from a tax standpoint, because we're not going to sit around and do our own taxes. We didn't do it initially. We've outsourced some of our marketing efforts. We've internalized some of it now, but there are certain tasks that technical people are just never going to be good at. We are all introverts for the most part, technical people.
Just to follow up, one of the things I think is really cool about what you guys have done, being kind of three co-founders, is everybody kind of respects the bucket that everybody else has.
Sure.
There's a lot of trust.
Yeah. You know, to reiterate, you have to trust your partners emphatically in regard to what they're doing. They're going to make mistakes because you make mistakes, and we don't look over each other's shoulders and point out the flaws. We have individuals that are able to walk up and go, man, hey, can you take a second look at this, because I don't know what the hell I'm doing. You know, it's pretty much that straightforward. And if you don't have that kind of respect for your partners, you're going to end up, you know, separating. So
I'll just add to that real quick that I think we do a very good job of staying out of each other's way for the most part. And so I think if you can agree on the big picture and agree on the vision and where you're trying to get to, and then it helps us, I think, to kind of have our areas of responsibility, because we do have that trust. And so we're not looking over each other's shoulders and judging how they made a decision on a particular day. We're looking at it from a very big picture. And we know that they're going to have bad days, they're going to have things not go well, but over time, they're going to deliver. And so as long as we keep the big picture in mind and everybody's doing their part, then it works out.
Question. Suppose two of you had a opposing view about a task, and there was a veto power given to one person to do, hey, you go by this. Is there anything like that? Is it a good thing to have in a team? Someone can say veto, hey, I take a decision between you guys. We are going to do that. Is it a good thing to do?
I think it's like any relationship, you pick your battles. So we have a lot of times where we're not all three in lockstep on something, but I think the way we work is that we definitely respect, and we try not to ever get personal in our debates, so that we can always depend on that. If one of us has an opposing viewpoint, that they're coming at it from at least a semi-rational position, and we just need to understand. And we spend a lot of time probably, agonizing over things where we don't have consensus. And again, it depends on the battle of whether we proceed 2-1 or whether we wait and take a path that we can get a 3-0 on. And I was gonna follow that up on that. The three that you see here are, in kind of piggybacking on what Mark said. If the presentation was everybody who had been one of the leaders at Mainstream Technologies, there would be 7 people sitting up here. So over the years, we've definitely had times and individuals where we definitely did not see eye to eye, and some of those, in a couple of those cases, those have been very good friends. But the importance, not just in who you hire for the people that are going to make up your workforce, but for the people you're going to go into business with. That's very important, and you're not always going to get that right, because you just like a marriage or anything else, that's going to change over time. So it's not always fun and games.
First off, thanks guys for not finding the couple of little CICS programmers we had hiding down in Arkansas Systems. But I'm just curious, it sounds like you did a little bit of a pivot when you decided to go off and start running operations in a SaaS kind of mode. I was just wondering today, can you give us a kind of percentage breakdown? How much of your business is development, and how much of it is running a SaaS kind of operation?
Our current application group probably makes up about 80% of our revenue, somewhere in there approximately. Our data center probably makes up, I was going to say 6-8%, something like that. Colo. Our managed services probably makes up 10%, and then the remainder of it's going to be infrastructure that we're currently running. Interestingly enough, as our data center, we have a 5,000 square foot data center, and it looks almost empty. But our revenue continues to grow purely because of the virtualization that's going on. The revenue per square foot is increasing, substantially. And you look into it, it's like, where's all your cabinets? I'd love to fill it with a bunch of virtualization instead of a bunch of colo.
Cool. All right. Time for a couple more questions. Anybody have any questions? Nobody has any questions. Yes, we have. Yep.
So I write internal software for my company, and that's what you guys were doing for Dillard's. How is it transitioning to writing software for clients and having to have a product that's, complete all the way to their satisfaction?
That is one area, and I'm going to hand it to you here in a second to talk more about this, but that was very different because we would agree to do a project for somebody, and we get in there and immediately it's like, well, you guys don't care about this being right. Obviously, we got to be doing this and this and this and this. And they say, well, no, we just want it to work. And I'd have to hold him back from, no, but it's got to be like this. So that whole moving from us being in control to, well, it's their software, we need to do it the way they want to do it, even though we think they're idiots. But what we learned in that through some very hard knocks was that the whole procurement model for software development services is kind of patterned after construction industry, but the level of detail that typically we are provided with to develop a quote is nowhere near as robust as what a construction contractor is dealing with. So this whole fixed bid, I'm going to give you a quote and I guarantee that I'm not going to go $1 over this, even though 30 minutes into the relationship, you're going to find this other feature that you forgot, and you're going to expect it to be part of the deal, and you're not going to like the change order, or you're not going to like the delay in the deadline or something like that. So that's been a challenge for us, which we're very pleased that the industry is moving more toward an agile and an iterative model, because a lot of this stuff still ties back to waterfall development that we were doing 30 years ago. And it's just it's a failed model. It's impossible to succeed. So that as we had to do a lot of market education to make sure that customers understand that we are not going to give you a quote. We don't do fixed bids, and that's what I wanted Jeff to echo in, because he's very passionate about this subject.
Very true. Very true. Yeah, I think we run into when you're an internal developer. The scope is what's most important typically, the scope and the deadlines. The budget is not often talked about because you're an internal resource, you're sunk cost, and so it's just no matter what it takes, no matter how many hours you need to work, get it done right. And so that's the focus. We have clients that are on that end of the spectrum, and that's what they are all about, but then we have the total opposite side where the budget is the driving factor. And we do a lot of talking about the triple constraints, the budget, the time, and then the scope. And so that it's a balancing act. Every client is different, and you have to really communicate with the client, really understand where they're coming from, be very iterative, incremental in the development, very agile, and just constant collaboration and communication so that you stay on track with that. I think that's our key. And then we are very big believers in not doing fixed bids, because what you need today is going to be different than what you're going to need next week, because things change so fast, technology evolves so fast, your user base changes so fast, what they want, that you can't know what they're going to want in 6 months. You can have a guess and you start down that path, but then you just constantly have to adjust. So it's definitely a learning experience for I think some of our associates too that come in, because they have been an internal developer, and so they come in and they're not used to having that clock in their head and having to keep up with the hours and the budget and be aware of that. They're more focused on just the work, and that's great. That's a great place to start because they're passionate about it, but then we have to have that extra part too.
All right, so I've got one last question. You guys are pretty good at big data, and that's a term that's thrown out there a lot. Put it into perspective with the software that you run in the logistics vendor space, and then compare that number to us to Amazon.
Okay. Well, in the compliance networks world, we in near real time are analyzing supply chain transactions from 15 to 20 retailers around the country in varying sizes. But so those are purchase orders that are let out. Those are all the freight and receipt and distribution transactions, detailed level counts as that merchandise is shipped and received and sent to stores for selling or sent directly to customers. And plus all the electronic notifications that are flowing around about those physical shipments. Combined across the compliance networks universe, we process each year about $65 billion worth of retail transactions. By comparison, Amazon processes about $49 billion a year.
Companies in Arkansas just don't know what they're doing.
But yeah, then if you look at, typically on average, we keep 7 years of live data for all of those customers. So you take 65 billion times 7, that puts us where kind of a skewed comparison. But we have each year we're slinging around about equivalent to a year's worth of Walmart transactions, and we do it from a little tiny space over here downtown with a bunch of homeboys from Arkansas.
Two more really quick questions. Any? I want to tell Jeff the basics that if ever gets me.
Okay, it's very simple question. Like, incredible story last 18 years or so. I know that there's a lot of opportunities came up in the software industry. Like, seems like you all really took advantage of the Y2K issue. Then comes the web 2.0, whatever the 3.0. Then comes mobile. So now looking back, you all still a services company majority. Do you ever look back and see we could have gone back to the product side rather than sticking with the services side? Like, because you have companies started 5 years ago, 6 years ago, now have 300,000 employees. 18 years ago, you started, now 50 employees. It's not about the number, but still, when you look back, what do you really think? You all missed the bandwagon, or you could have done better? What do you think about that?
If you had a time machine, what would you have done?
I guess that we do a biannual survey of our workforce as part of a strategic planning process, and that idea comes up every time we ask it. Why don't the first time we did it in 2004, 5, somebody told us that we ought to ditch these losers from Houston and devote all of our resources, stop selling any development services, and devote all our resources to developing a product and sell it. That person no longer works for us. So that person no longer works for us. But that idea comes up repeatedly, and I think for at least for me, I'll let them answer. But I haven't seen the idea that I felt comfortable enough that I understood the ins and outs and how it was going to work since we did the thing with compliance networks. That was I remember that when they laid it out on my dining room table, it's like, man, I understand exactly what this thing is going to do. I understand exactly who the market is, and I understand exactly how it's going to succeed. And I haven't seen that since then. Have we missed the boat on some, one of our taglines is that we're not, we do mainstream technologies. We're not cutting edge guys. We like technologies to kind of bake and kind of get a little more established before we jump onto them. So maybe we've missed some top rate revenue by not jumping into something early, but that stuff fizzles out sometimes as fast as it. So it's, so I'm pretty comfortable with how we've done.
I would agree with John's assessment in regard to the software in which we have developed as a resale product. We're basically 1 for 3. We've had one success, and it continues to be a success, and it was the one in which we understood the most, and we felt it would be the success out of the group. And we still went down a venture path of developing other software, which did not pan out. We invested a tremendous amount of money, and it just failed. So missing the boat, yeah, we could have missed the boat had we had the perfect opportunity, but I would venture to say that there's a lot of companies out there that took that, what they thought was the perfect opportunity, and they're no longer around. There is something to be said about the hedgehog approach. Do what you know. Continue to do what you know. Try to stay out of areas of outside your expertise, frankly. So.
Only thing I would add is just say that I think what we do is our passion, and it's what we enjoy. So we're not necessarily trying to get rich quick or come up with the idea that's going to allow us to get out of business in a year or two. I think this is what we like to do, and I think we're passionate about growing our company. We're passionate about the associates we have, the clients we have, and just continuing to do the hedgehog approach and just see how big we can make our company doing it our way and doing it the way we like to do it with the passion we bring to it every day.
Hey, thanks, guys. Going back to what you were talking on a few minutes ago between kind of the waterfall versus moving towards a more agile environment, which I think we're all in favor of, and seeing that failing fast and iterative model. One of the clients I've worked with in the past, I've seen how their development team, because they're in that open structure, there's the continual reevaluation of, we're working on this project for 3 weeks, but now because we're iterating, man, now we see if we turn right here, this has a 3-to-1 payout, and then this has a 4-to-1. But as I would talk to some of the developers, I know that they would run into a frustration of feeling like, man, we put in 5 weeks on this only to say it's now fallen down the ladder in terms of priority because we get a better payout over here. And so just how do you all, from a leadership standpoint, but understanding your developers and your team, knowing they might want to see something through to the end, but also how do you help them when you reevaluate and say, hey, we did iterate on this, but we found better opportunities and we're going to kind of change direction. Just kind of any thoughts on how you manage through that with a team, keeping people happy, keeping them connected, while at the same time doing what's right for the business to grow when you have better opportunities. Does that make sense?
Very good question. And I think the biggest part of that is what you said, keeping them connected to the business. I think we try to make sure that our developers, being a smaller company, they wear a lot of hats. They're not just getting specs tossed over the wall and churning things out. So we try to make sure that they understand the whys behind what they're doing. So if 3 weeks into something that there is a better idea, a better payoff, a better way of doing things that the client sees, then we want them to understand that why we're making that change. We're very big believers in that we've got to communicate, collaborate, and make sure that the understanding is there. Still a challenge because everybody wants to drive something home that they've been working on, but usually people can see the reasons behind it. So that's what we try to do.
And I think communication. We get the entire company together periodically, which is an idea we got from you, the Friday morning meeting at Arkansas Systems. We only do it once a quarter because I couldn't do it every week. But I think that is our standing appointment to let them know exactly what we're thinking, and a lot of times that is telling them that we decided to change the direction and telling them to their face, looking them in the eye and telling them. It's not necessarily always a cheerleading session. Sometimes there's uncomfortable news, but I think they appreciate and they understand that we're not going to candy coat it or shirk from it. So I think that even through tough news, we don't seem to lose them.
One of the issues that we do fight is the scalability of that communication. We're at 50 people. What are we going to look like at 150? Are we going to still be able to communicate that message? How is our culture going to be impacted? Interestingly enough, we're getting ready to go through another strategic planning session where we're going to involve all 50 of our people and present them with those problems and say, how do we scale and continue to communicate? How do we continue to protect our culture?
Awesome. All right, guys, thank you so much for coming and doing Build It tonight. Let's give them a round of applause for coming. I'm gonna give you a couple of announcements. We're gonna spend 20 minutes or so finishing up the beverages in the back, and then we'll shut down. Next Tuesday, the Venture Center has a program called Catalyst. It's from 6 to 8. It's a networking speed mixer. So we're gonna have some folks come up and talk. A couple minutes, we're gonna do some pitches of some entrepreneurs, some corporate partners, and if you're a developer or designer. So if you're doing some contract work, or you've got the next startup idea, it's a great opportunity to start practicing your pitch and telling your story. In October, we're running a hackathon. So who in here has been to a hackathon before? Cool. All right, there's a few. Anybody in here, raise your hand if you're a software developer. Okay, security expert. Okay, then all of those people, listen up. So October 17th, starting at noon, running for 24 hours, we're doing a cybersecurity hackathon. So imagine a Jeopardy game board with categories like web vulnerabilities, C vulnerabilities, forensics, I don't know, a whole bunch of other cool stuff, and levels 100 through 500. And so teams will say, we're gonna do the puzzle that's web vulnerability for 300, flip the card over and start to compete. The team that gets the most puzzles completed in the 24-hour time period wins. So it's gonna be really fun. We've got about 6 people building puzzles. We could use about 4 more. It's 1 to 4 hours to build a puzzle. It's not too terribly bad. So if you've got some time and would be interested in doing that or know somebody that could, please talk to me after tonight. It would be much appreciated. So again, guys, thank you so much for doing this and for being such a big supporter of the Venture Center. And we'll wrap up. Thanks.